Welcome to the Initiation Workshop session. In this session, we'll be focusing a bit on business analysis. So in this session, we'd like to introduce the Initiation Workshop, and we'll discuss the importance of the personas and the business process modeling that will occur. We'll discuss the epic structures and user stories, and we'll finish up by discussing the overall information architecture. So let's go ahead and get started. In the initiation overview section, we looked at the example of the initiation workshop, which is a one-week workshop that focuses on a number of different things. In the overview, we talked about the different key areas where planning is important, and in this session, we're going to focus a little bit more on the business and the types of things that need to be done in the red sessions. So if we start with aligning what the project vision is, and that will depend on the context and the purpose, and it might sometimes even be called a product vision depending on how this is working. But the vision is the reason for the existence of the project. So what are we going to do different than the existing solution, or what is the ultimate goal? This vision should be one or two sentences which are assertive and inspiring, and that will help the team be able to guide their decisions. This is not the application's description, it's the change that the application is supposed to support for the business organization. So for example, we might want a vision to be something like transform the employee evaluation process so that it occurs continuously instead of twice a year. Or develop a brand new partner portal that creates no help or support calls. The vision is something that the business should already have an idea of when we start the project. And our Define a Business Vision course actually approaches this more from the ideation phase. So this project vision is different than the business vision. The business vision might be an earlier version of this, and then that business vision may help accelerate the work that needs to be done to create the business vision, the project vision. Once we have a project vision, we also need to think a little bit about success criteria. And those would be the business goals that we plan to attain with the new solution. Technical goals should be quantified, like page visits or an increase or decrease in certain business KPIs. And then from there, we may have other strategic or other tactical goals that may be useful to understand more of the context of this project. And that will allow the whole team to better understand the drivers and the motivation for this project. Now, once we understand the overall vision, then we have to think about the roles and the personas of who we're trying to reach. And the users must be grouped into different roles, because when they use the solution, they may be using it for different purposes, or those users may have different capabilities. So some questions that can help us in defining what our users' roles are, maybe are all the users from the same department? What other departments may this have an impact on? How do we know who the supervision or controlling people are? How do we gather metrics? And what do we do, or who will correct any errors inside of the app? Now, when we go to identify the personas, these are more closely related to users. So as a user may have more than one role, their personas can have more than one role as well. And when the personas are finished, they should describe the user, including their background, their needs, their goals, and all of the characteristics they might have. So here we're seeing an example definition of a persona. And these represent fictitious people which are based on the knowledge that our real users have given us. The goal is to bring the user to life by developing a persona who has names, who has different motivations, and maybe even a photo. So a persona is meant to further help the group understand the related users, and that way we'll have more of a context of how they would actually use things. So in users, we may have some type of characteristics or different types of measurements that we may wish to be able to understand. So how many users are there? Are there hundreds? Are there thousands? What type of impact would they have? Do they use the application frequently? What type of domain or background do these users have? How technically proficient are they? What is their average age? Do they have a different type of physical engagement with the application? Will they be sitting down or will they be standing up? So it's very important to try to understand all of the user characteristics and metrics for how they'll be using the app. There also are business goals. And when we think of the overall business goals, these should be the ones that the user is after or that the user can relate to. So as a test of completeness, we would want to check if these user goals would actually be completed once we've done everything we need to for the application. And then in the middle, we have the user needs. These should be short, high-level descriptions of what the user will require to fulfill his role. Now, it's important to talk to the real users directly to make sure that we capture their real needs. We don't want to make assumptions and actually begin putting our needs in place of what the real user needs are. And when we look at the example agenda, we can see that we will take time to actually visit the user workspace and make sure that we understand exactly what the user is going to be doing. Now, we do want to make sure that the user's needs and the business goals are listed and appear to be linked so that we understand that these two things will both be able to be solved at the end of the project. And remember, users are the starting point for our business analysis. So we may link back to the value proposition at any given time, and the users will begin deriving the backlog from their needs. So the user needs described in the personas will help us derive the things that need to be created inside of the project. So all user needs should be backed up by an actual user story that is highly relevant to this project. From the personas and the people, we can then move on to the business processes. We can begin modeling the business processes, and this may help break the ice because the discovery process helps people become more interactive and allows them to talk about things they actually know. So in this step, we'll typically start modeling the main business processes or workflows. And this will start with conversations between different key business users, stakeholders, to make sure we understand what the high-level process steps are. And then when we complete the high-level process, we can actually begin digging into some of the details depending on the amount of time we have. Now this step can sometimes be overlooked, and it is a very important step. So we have to remember that once we're done with the main process, we don't have to go into every one of the details, but we may wish to pick the ones that seem to be of major importance so that we can better understand the systems and the capabilities that are involved inside of this process. So detailing all of the different steps is important, and understanding which ones are the most important can be a key result. So we also want to understand how the new application should look. So low fidelity mockups or wireframes are something that can be very helpful. It's just a draft for the user interface, and it focuses on the different elements and how they should interact. We're not focusing that much on look and feel at this point or color scheme. We're just there to get the most important aspects of the overall journey. We may be able to better understand and get more information about that journey by trying to put together the screens and the data that they may need. How they're going to interact with the app is very important, and this is the first opportunity to test how well the business concepts and processes that we have documented are really enabling us to understand this journey. And this gives us a way of almost beginning a quick usability test to assess whether this type of UI is going to work for those users or not. So this is one of the first deliverables and opportunities for the key users to visualize what their system may look like. And given that first opportunity, we want to make sure that it's a good one. We will also have high fidelity mockups, and these will be based off of some of the low fidelity mockups. And this is an opportunity to do something a little bit different, which is to show the end users how great their app could really look like. We should never underestimate the power of high-fi mockups because they often score very high in motivating the team and the users. So the UI design can also begin to think about some of the non-functional requirements and bring in different experts to help make these look even better. When these are done right, they can definitely have a wow effect on the team, and that can change their perception and their view of how important this project will be. Next, we have the epic structure. From user needs, business processes, and what we've learned with the mockups, we should be able to create this structure. On the top, the user's needs are here and what that context will be, and there's usually some sort of theme to that. Epics should represent a process step or closely relate to some functionality or user story. And finally, the high-level stories that during iteration shaping will give origin to the actual final user story. We'll need to make sure that all of those user needs and business process steps, everything that would be relevant, has been raised as part of the mockups and is relevant to all of these different high-level stories. So the epic structure is a good way for us to organize our user stories, being very easy to look at and easy to trace back to the user stories. So this will help us clearly understand the business value of some of the different pieces that are here. Now, one thing to note, this is the final level of detail that we'll normally aim at during the initiation phase, with the exception of trying to get to what iteration 1 is going to be. The final user stories aren't really created inside of the initiation. Otherwise, it would be way too easy for us to get lost in all of the details in these small different types of things. And since there's only 1 week and it's already an intense week, we don't want to get lost in that level of detail. Now, the user story mapping is another way to represent the epic structure, and it's a useful way to have a good overview of the whole solution roadmap. It helps discovering any missing backlog pieces, and when used throughout the project, this can be a powerful project status tool because it helps everyone to clearly understand what the team has done, what the team is doing, and what the team is going to be doing next. So this example and illustration can be a possible scenario that at the end of initiation, where only iteration 1 user stories are fully detailed and known, we still have some of the other high-level user stories available. Another deliverable of the initiation week is the vision document. And the information architecture is the navigation map of the application, or simply put, it's the site map for given user roles. Normally, each user role will have its own view of the application. It may have its own permissions, and that may mean that each of those has a different information architecture. It defines how the user is going to navigate the site and how easy or not it will be for them to get to certain types of functionality. So hopefully, now that we've had a look at the example workshop agenda, we've talked in a little more detail through some of these activities, all of this should make more sense as we've discussed the purpose and the concepts involved. It's a very important week for the project as a great deal of analysis is being done and documented so that we have that information as we move through the project. So that's it for the initiation workshop focusing on the business analysis sessions. Thanks for watching and have a great day.